You're listening to BSI, the podcast with Benny Philhauer, Tao and Arco Para. Enjoy!
Clearly a time I would have loved to have given a DDT to Bruce. Without a doubt. I can't even hesitate. If Benny or Ike passed away, whose wife would you saddle up to try and console?
Welcome back to BSI, the podcast. We are going to get Rob Stone on the podcast today. That should be exciting. Flipping the script, as Nino put it.
Yeah. Do we know what episode we're on? Because I know you usually forget. So
I think it's episode 8, maybe.
Okay. Doesn't even matter what episode we're on. I think it's like really the most irrelevant point.
It doesn't matter because like this could be our last. We don't know.
Yeah, every episode we're going into possibly being our last. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes in our group chat that the listeners need to hold on to every episode they get because it could be ending soon. But we got Rob Stone on, and this guy is an absolute legend, a guy that I grew up seeing as one of the first faces in soccer, and just seeing his path throughout the evolution of the game in this country has been cool to see. So I'm glad that we were able to get him on.
Yeah, we'll talk about a little bit of where he started and what he's done for soccer, but then also all the other sports that he loves and has done as well that maybe some other people don't know about. We'll talk about some of his favorite players, favorite coaches, favorite moments with the U.S. soccer team. So there's plenty to get at, and I think it'll be a good episode. So without further ado, let's get him on the show. Rob Stone, welcome. Welcome, Rob Stone, to the podcast, dude. I can't believe you're on. How you doing today?
What do you mean you can't believe I'm on? Nobody in this country has anything but free time on their hands. And in fact, I'm a little disappointed it took you guys this long to track me down. I mean, Mo Adu got the call before me. I know he's probably in all your guys' Rolodex, but geez, dude.
I actually did not know that I had your phone number. I could have actually just texted you because we worked together for one game. In one game, yeah.
How did that game go for you? How was your kind of like semi-professional TV debut?
Yeah, it was interesting. I actually have some questions for you about that. So,
do you remember the one piece of advice I gave you when it was all said and done?
To have fun?
No, when it's done, when the broadcast is done.
To wear makeup?
Well, that
you put makeup on me. Remember, you actually applied blush on my cheeks.
You are not the first, and you won't be the last professional athlete that I've applied makeup to.
No, I actually don't remember. That's not good. That's a bad sign, huh?
He was probably going to ask you,
right, Sal? Geez, the best piece of advice that I try to give newbies in the business is self-scout. So when you've done your job, go back home and watch it immediately, preferably by yourself, because mom and dad or certain members of your inner circle will tell you, oh, it was great, it was beautiful, so fantastic. But you'll watch it and you'll grimace and you'll get tight and you'll be pain because you're like, why did I say that? What am I doing? Where am I looking right now? What do I do with my hands? Right? Questions like that. So when you watch it, you are your best critic, and you will hear it, you will see it, and you will improve upon it.
And it was painful. I watched it, and it was painful.
So when you three watched back your first BSI, the podcast, you guys must have said, what was I doing?
I wasn't a part of it yet. I was late, but the very first episode is brutal.
It was bad.
Right?
The first time Benny and I tried to even like talk, just the two of us, we were like, like we couldn't even talk. It was terrible.
Huge room for improvement. The other advice I give you is this. Always make sure you're hold on a second. Timing. Always make sure you're well lit. There you go.
There you go. Love that.
I got that one.
See, like Sal. See, Sal, he's dialed in, man. Yeah. You're in focus. Like Benny looks like I don't know what Benny looks like. He looks foggy. Ike looks like he's ready to bang out like a final exam at Wake Forest. And meanwhile, the UCLA stud via Germany over there in the upper right is just
What about you with your Colgate shirt?
I'm in desperate times right now. I don't know where my nearest collared shirt is. I don't know where a razor is. I don't know where deodorant is.
Was that in the bottom of the closet there? It was the last shirt. Everything's in the wash.
Hold on. So what it is here, this is like my proud long sleeve. I love long sleeve type shirts these days. So I got a Peloton. I'm one of those dudes who got a Peloton at Christmas. And the timing couldn't have been more perfect, right? Through what we're all going through right now. So I'm banging away on Peloton these last couple of weeks and months. And I'm not a sweater. Are you guys sweaters? Like when you're playing soccer?
I didn't used to
not
be,
really.
but
I never. Yeah, I'm a sweater on Peloton, and mentally I feel like I'm getting a great workout. But also I'll go into the sauna at the gym and I'll be like, oh, good sweat, Rob. Good workout today, right? Just because just the concept of sweating makes me feel like I'm doing something. So Peloton kicks my tail and I'm sweating, and I'll always wear these type of long sleeve shirts, but I don't immediately launder them. So they kind of marinate every once in a while, and then they find their way and they get washed with everything, and I get it. And I did a decent drive the other day wearing this shirt, and the whole drive I'm like, something is off. Like I was like, I'm getting hit by coronavirus. My respiratory system is starting to fail. I was like kind of coughing, like what's going on? And it was the shirt. The shirt needed a proper airing out and laundering. I think we've all, as a college athlete, right, at some point we've been through workout gear that needs a little more TLC.
It's like
and
the
still
old goalie gloves in a bag.
Yeah.
Oh, that's gross.
Yes, Sally. Right.
Yeah.
I'll say I'm not a sweater anymore because I don't exercise. But let's get to the first question. The first quick hitter. This has become slow hitters over the course of these podcasts, but we'll see if we can get through them a little quicker. So, favorite sport that you've played and favorite sport that you've watched / commentated. So I can go through a list of some of the ones that you've actually participated in, because I don't know if everybody knows this. First of all, we know you pretty well. I didn't know how much bowling you have done over your career, and I think you're a bigger name in bowling than you are in soccer. Would that be accurate or no?
Man, that's a tough one.
So here are the sports you've done.
All right.
Bowling, soccer, football, basketball, WWE. What do you mean a little bit?
I'm a former 24/7 champ. Yep.
That's what I'm saying.
But I mean,
and
like
darts.
Darts
and
I've
darts
done.
as well. Have you?
World
Did I
Series
miss
of
some?
Darts. Yes, you missed NCAA tennis. You missed boxing.
Didn't you do outdoors as well?
The outdoor games.
Great outdoor games, like log rolling and dogs jumping and stuff. I haven't done baseball. I take that back. I did one studio day of baseball. I did hockey, but that was college radio. I think that's it. Yeah, you guys found a lot of stuff. That was pretty good.
So what's your favorite one to play? Let's get to that one first.
It's soccer. Soccer's my DNA. I started, probably kindergarten, before it was in vogue to have your kid playing soccer, and I just gravitated to that sport right away. So soccer is my DNA. That's who I am. That's what I am. And remember, when I broke into the business on the soccer side, there were only a handful, and that's being generous, of soccer announcers. So I think back then, I was like an elite officer in the Marines, right? The proud, the brave, whatever the heck that tagline is. That's all. Because there were
one of the few faces
us.
I remember growing up seeing.
Yeah,
and
and now we're lucky to have so much soccer out there in television that there's more people like me. But if you go to bowling, Benny, there's not a whole lot of dudes like me. So I'm an elite infantryman in bowling, but now in the world of soccer, I'm probably like one of those guys who's been bumped upstairs, who you're starting to forget about every once in a while. Then he'll appear here and there and go, oh yeah, I remember that dude. He did an MLS Cup game, or he did an MLS game, or a college cup that you guys played in, or something like that.
And what do you like doing most in terms of commentating?
That's a loaded question, and it's not me trying to avoid something, because I'm really fortunate that I love all the sports that I do. There have been a few where I'm happy to move away from, but for the most part, I really enjoy each season, and I also enjoy the end of each season. I like variety. I like spice in my life, so I loved how college football, like I absolutely adore the college football season, but it's a sprint, not a marathon. So when August hits, I'm geared up. I'm fired up for those long Saturdays and those grinds. But when things start slowing down in December, I'm really thankful that the college basketball season is there, and it picks up the slack, and it's a new thing to test my mind and new conversation topics. But let me tell you, when the Big East tournament is done, basketball, I'm like, thank goodness hoops is done, because now I can solely focus on soccer and or bowling or whatever. And soccer is that year-round sport. So I think in the end, if a gun is at my hand, soccer is the one that I do love the most, just because it is really, truly deep down into my bone marrow who I am.
All right. Well, that actually leads perfectly to the second question, because
do you let the other guys talk, Benny? And like,
this is my section here.
Oh, this is
my
segment.
segment.
So basically, how it works is Benny.
You didn't listen to the last episode. Benny went on some tangent about Freddie Adu, and next thing I know, he was seeing.
There's a lot of tangents. It
was like, "Bro, Benny, just who cares?"
Remind me. I have a Freddie Adu Pele story. Don't let me forget that one.
Okay.
No.
Even better.
Is this what was it? Sprite or Sierra Mist? I can't even remember. But anyways,
Sierra Mist.
So there are no sports right now. So this must be a painful time for you because you like spice in your life.
Yeah.
So most painful moment in your career, is it? And you can add anything to what I say here, but I'm going to give you some options. Eating the hottest pepper in the world. By the way, how long did that last?
As far as pure pain,
that was incredible.
It.
So
that
I
was
recently
a no-brainer.
watched it. The hottest pepper in the world. Is that what it was?
Yeah,
That's
the Buchalogi pepper.
That's incredible.
Sal, the basic math equation in entertainment is pain equals comedy. And when you're in it, you're in it to win it. So I grew up a fan of the old school David Letterman, and I would watch him, and I would watch some of these other kind of improv comedians who turned into improv actors or hosts, and they would always kind of bravely yet stupidly go where they know they shouldn't, but they know it's going to achieve greater content.
Yeah.
So I remember that day vividly, Benny. And the question is, yes, that was my most painful day because at that time at ESPN, we were working under this umbrella called concentric circles. So if you had a circle right here, that was the football game, right? That you were covering. If you could draw a circle that touched that football game, but also had some other things that potentially could pull in a viewer, you were given the green light. Go get it. Go find them. So I think I honestly I felt like I did a soccer game in Toronto, and the next morning caught a flight to somewhere in Texas, and then drove to New Mexico. It might've been like a flight to El Paso, and it drove to New Mexico, and like literally rode in the hotel, showered, and I got out of the shower, and they said, "We're picking you up in 10 minutes. We're going to go to this Chili Pepper Institute." So I had put no thought into it, and I had a game that night. I was stressed, and I was just like, this whole thing is one take. So I remember I rolled into the Chili Pepper Institute outside, and I just told my camera guy, who was a good friend of mine, and I said, "Dwayne, I'm like, just keep rolling. Don't hit stop." I go, if I throw up, you better have it, right? I'm not going back for second takes. This is what we're doing. And so the dude with the mustache, Sal, handed me the pepper, and I'm like, what am I going to do? Just hold it, rub it in my eye? You're going to take a bite of the damn thing.
You had to have underestimated it though, right?
100%.
You knew it was going to be hot, but
I did no research. And sometimes that's the best way to go into a project, is just go in blind and go in dumb and accept it. So I took that bite. And it was crunchy. Nothing hit. And I'm asking to follow up. And I'm like, well, it's right here. It was such a tiny bite. Let's take another one. But as soon as I hit that second bite, the first bite kicked in. And I was like, oh, shit, I'm in trouble right now. And he was talking. And the stress level inside started picking up because I didn't know what I got myself into. And I quickly found I was in a fight that I was going to lose. And that's why I asked the guy, I said, like, how long does this last? Because I did no research on this. And when he barked out a couple hours, I did.
He said 5 to 6.
He said 5 to 6.
He said 5 to
hours.
6.
And my reaction was like one of those, like
Seriously?
internally, it's like, you have got to be effing me, brother. Like, you cannot drop this information on me right now. And
how long did it last?
Hours. It was a good 3 to 4 hours. But my tongue was numb. So it was really hard to talk. And I had to go into the coach's office and interview the head coach, and I could barely talk. And he's looking at me, and I'm like, hey, I just ate the Buchalogi thing at your Chili Pepper Institute. And he immediately knew what I was talking about. And he just like had nothing but sympathy. And he's like, what do you need? What do you need from me? And I was like mumbling questions, like, tell me about your offense and the quarterback. And he's like, I think he said quarterback. Is he going to be able to play today? It was just a train wreck, but it made great television. So that was my most painful moment.
Yeah, I didn't even get to the other ones though.
But go on.
I was going to give you the options of most painful moment: eating hottest pepper in the world. This was more painful to watch, I thought, but putting marshmallows in your mouth with Rachel Bonetta while she stuck warheads in her mouth and drank a shot of Tabasco. And then the last one is staying at home 24/7 with the entire family with no sports. Yeah, it would be the chili pepper. I have 4 kids, 14, 12, 12, and 10. And as I told you guys, I have 1 wife and 4 kids, and I'm trying to keep it that way. But homeschooling is tough, man. And I think we all knew how important teachers were to our lives, but more so now. Like, I'm relearning 8th grade and 6th grade math, and it's kicking my ass, and it's given me flashbacks to when my dad was helping me with my math when I was growing up in Connecticut. And I got so mad and so frustrated where I'd be like, Dad, just tell me the answer so I can figure out how you got there, right? And so now, and I hated it. I would storm out. It was painful. It was borderline tears. I'm like, just help me get the answer. I don't want all these 84 steps to get there. Yet, here I am as a dad, and I'm doing the same damn thing to my kids who are saying, Dad, just sign the paper. I'm like, Dad doesn't sign papers, man. Hand it over. Let me see. And I'm like, I'll eyeball one math equation. And I'm like, da-da-da-da. I'm like, no way that's right. Let's go to number 8. That one's wrong. I'm like, Jabroni, come over here. We're banging out 1 through 21. And so now I've got like conference texts with teachers, and they're explaining to me, and they're sending me to places, and I'm hunting it down. And now I'm legitimately excited when a math page comes to me, because it's keeping the brain going, and it's kicking in some of the old school intelligence that I had and clearly lost.
Well, my wife's a badass educator, so if you need a tutor, we'll give you a great rate.
Done and done. Can she tutor Spanish? That's where I'm really hosed.
She has a minor in Spanish too. She knows it all. I'm telling you.
Ike, this is happening, Ike. This is happening.
I'm selling her off. No problem. Let's do it.
All right. Well, next question has nothing to do with soccer. It has to do with the neighborhood. So you've had some good neighbors along the years. I want to know who's the best neighbor that you've had between Bruce Arena and Bob Bradley.
So Bruce, when he lived in California, I would walk by his house on the way to taking my kids to school. And Bob's in that gated community out there in Manhattan Beach. So I don't get to see much of Bob. Bob and I had dinner together just at the start of preseason, or preseason was about to start, but I don't see much Bob. But back in the day, I saw a lot of Bruce, and I saw a lot of Phyllis, his wife. So they had a golden retriever, and I had a golden retriever, and I would walk my dog by, and Phyllis is always like, come on in. And, the thing about Bruce is, Bruce and I go back to the late 90s, when he was the DC United head coach and then the US coach. And he was a pain in the ass. Like, I did not like Bruce. And I feel fairly certain that he didn't like me. And I just couldn't understand. Like, he and I we didn't fully jive. And it took me a long time in talking to guys like Harks and others that when he's busting you, when he's breaking your, that was kind of his entrance way. That's his gateway to, hey, I want to see if you can hang with me and kind of push back. And it took a long time. It actually took him to get out of coaching and come into the television booth for a while, for him to kind of understand where I was coming from with why I was asking questions the way I did and the way we presented broadcasts, for him to kind of understand who I was and that I wasn't not a bad guy, but I think he just understood what I was dealing with and where I was coming from. And I think he got a greater appreciation of my love for the sport, particularly the sport here in America, and want to see it grow. So Bruce was the better neighbor only because I got to see him a lot, but now Bob's the only game in town. So I get to see Bob. I saw Kenny not too long ago. I saw Ante Razov as well. So it's fun seeing some of these old faces who are still in the game.
Yeah. Well, that's all for the quick hitter. So I'll throw it out to some of the other guys
quick,
here.
Benny, I'm sorry.
No, but those are long that's fine. You can elaborate as much.
Deep triples. All right.
That's right. All right. So Ike and Sal, jump in, and we can all ask questions here. And
Yeah.
Let's see what he has for us.
I hear you're in a pretty epic pickup league with Stu Holden and Steve Nash. Enlighten us on these games. And is Steve Nash the real deal? Like, I've seen some clips of him. Like
100%.
Yeah, he is, huh?
100%. Steve Nash is the real deal. I feel very confident in saying that if Steve elected, when he was at his prime age-wise, if he elected to play soccer rather than basketball, he would be a professional soccer player in MLS without a doubt.
Better than he was at basketball?
He's pretty good at basketball. He is so good at soccer. And you forget, because we've watched Steve Nash for years playing basketball, and he was always a little guy, right? Yeah. But he's not a little guy playing soccer. He's a 6+ dude. Yeah. So he's going up, he's winning aerial battles. He is so calm and confident on the ball. He's got great moves, obviously wonderful endurance and athleticism. Steve Nash is legit. Stu Holden was a guy that, A, I consider him a really good friend of mine. But B, I remember when he was playing with the Houston Dynamo. And for me, he was one of those guys that I loved to watch. And I would watch him play for the Dynamo and MLS and the U.S. national team. I'd say, that's it. That's the guy. He's going to be the future of this U.S. national team because he can take guys on. He does things so effortlessly, but in a sexy manner. Like, this is a dude I can gravitate towards. And it really hurts me that injuries ended his career, because I'd be fascinated to know where he would sit in the conversation of greatest American soccer players ever, because I really firmly believe he would be in that upper tier. And he's still got it as long as the knee doesn't kick out on him. And then we'll get other dudes like, I'll walk in with my bag, and look, I'm low spectrum, dude. I'm sneaking in these games just because I know the dudes and I know the field and they've got my number. But like, here's Kobe Jones, right? And here's Alexi Lawless, and a ton of other names will show up. And then a couple of years ago, when the U.S. national team traditionally would have those January camps in LA, some guys would roll in early and they would join our game. So like Juan Agudelo is playing up top, and who else would we like a Beckerman might show? Like, you literally would have no idea who would show up for your kind of high-end ragtag pickup games in Southern California on turf.
You guys know I retired, right?
Come on down.
I haven't gotten an invitation yet.
Benny, you got to move back to LA, dude. That's central United States over there.
I'm staying over here for the time being. Yeah, it's a lot safer.
Smart move.
Yeah. Well, I got a couple of follow-up questions. A couple really. One, I guess we'll stick to the soccer one. One was, since you talked about the national team, who was that? And Stu was clearly one of them. Was it Stu or was it someone else that was just like a prospect that you couldn't wait to watch every time the national team got together? And then the other question was going to be about bowling, because I want to know about this guy, Pete Weber. He's like the only guy I know about in bowling. And I need to know about this guy.
So remind me about bowling. For soccer, it was, because I've been fortunate to be around the national team since probably like the 96, 97 windows when I got called back to ESPN. But before that, I was in Tampa doing local sports. So I covered MLS. I covered the Tampa Bay Mutiny. But I know, like, going forward, obviously Stu's a great example of a guy that I was really excited about. I loved watching a Joe Maxmore. I've always kind of got this blue collar hustle type mentality. A Brian McBride, a Joe Maxmore, the things that those guys did. Tab Ramos, what he did on the ball. What Tony and Eric and Alexi and Kobe did to elevate the stature of the game. But going forward, it was guys like Benny, like, I'll never forget that goal in Chicago, and you should never forget it either against Mexico. Like, those type of moments where I'm like, holy, like, we can make a difference. We can compete on this level. What Landon and DeMarcus and company did in Portugal, against Portugal, but in Korea, Japan was like, one of those moments where I said, here we go. And I think the problem with that question, Ike, is I feel like over the last couple of years, there's not that many guys that I can name where I'm saying, boy, I can't wait. I've got great regard for Christian Pulisic, but he's not that type of player. And we as American soccer fans are constantly getting sucked into naming that dude as the heir apparent. And I don't even know who the heir apparent to who, right? But that's the dude who's going to be able to get us over the hump. The Freddie Adu's out there. It didn't happen, unfortunately. And sadly right now, I think that check has been passed from Christian to Reyna, so I want to see more of Gio Reyna. I want to see what he's all about, but there's not too many guys out there now that have me getting out of my seat.
I think the biggest problem that I see with what you're saying as well is that if you had a Gio Reyna or a Pulisic or a McKennie 10, 15 years ago with the established players that were already there, you'd be so excited to see how this guy could make a difference with those guys. But right now, you don't even have like that unit that you can rely on, that what they're going to bring, and then sprinkle in the talent of Pulisic or the talent of McKennie or of Reyna or whatever. And so, it's hard. It's
a little frustrating because I consider myself a fan, and I did a flashback viewing a couple days ago of the original Dos a 0 in Columbus, USA, Mexico, that frigid night in March, and it was Josh Wolf and Clint Mathis coming off the bench for the U.S. And it made me happy and sad at the same point, because I remember how much I loved watching a Clint Mathis and a Josh Wolf. And at that point, the U.S. had the luxury to bring cats like that off the bench, like absolute game changers, guys you have a ton of confidence in. And I know they're both slightly early in their careers at that point, but I don't look at a U.S. bench right now and say, boy, here comes Clint Mathis. Can't wait. Here comes a Josh Wolf. And hopefully they're there, and we just haven't seen it. And I think a lot of it, too, is because, yes, there's more international soccer out there, but back when the U.S. team was at its best, MLS, for the most part, was that pipeline. They were the ones providing the majority of the talent that the U.S. depended on. And now a majority of those guys, not all of them, are overseas, and they've elected to go overseas. And I think the way MLS has developed as well, there's less and less opportunities for that young American soccer player to get those minutes, to get those games, to prove that they can go from being just making the 18 to making the 11 to being one of the guys that the national team coach has to really consider.
Yeah.
Bowling, Pete Weber, PDW, crazy guy.
Smooth transition.
You like that? History, grew up, his dad was one of the legends of bowling. So he was always under the shadow, and his dad was Pete Weber, was kind of like not a goody two shoes, but played it right, and everybody looked up to and had such great regard for him. And his son was a little bit of a rebel, not afraid to knock him back and speak his mind and wear the dark sunglasses and wear that black hat. And that's something MLS, I think every league, every sport needs, is somebody, we're always looking for the cowboy to wear the white hat and come in and save the day. But you need that black hat too. I'm a fan of professional wrestling, and you're only as good as the dude who comes rolling out that you hate and boo and is wearing that black hat. and Pete Weber, PDW Jr., whatever you want to call him, is that guy. And he's got a lot of energy. He's got a lot of charisma, and he riles up the crowd. And
oh yeah.
For a sport that needs some energy and needs some exuberance, he was a guy that provided it. And he's getting up there in his years right now. And I would love to see him make a run when all the sports come back and make one of these television shows, and just to yell out his name and see the crowd completely get behind him. Because that always happens in sports, that if you're a bad dude, but you're right out the storm, and bad dude has been here for 3-4 decades or whatever it is. He's outlasted his shelf life, but he's still here. Just like that, you become a fan favorite.
Wouldn't he yell at you sometimes as well?
Yeah. Which made it even better. But he yelled at me. It's funny. He yelled at me, or at least the way I took it, is he yelled at me in a total positive way, because he got the concept that we needed some self-promotion, that bowling needed some noise, bowling needed some energy, it needed some youth, it needed some whatever, it needed some strength on the social food chain, because you don't have to go back too far to know where soccer was just kind of a nerd sport, right? It's a bunch of people hanging out on bigsoccer.com and yelling about things and conspiracy theories, right? That's going deep, right?
Big Soccer.
But you know what I'm talking about? The groupies weren't there. People didn't understand, this and that. And now the crowd has obviously matured and has gotten so much more intelligent about the level of soccer and the players and the history that's going on, bowling needed a kick in the pants. And I brought some energy. I brought some of that to it. And Pete realized that he and I were kind of, brothers from another mother, in the concept that we needed to get people not to do a golf clap, but to stand up and yell and scream and get angry. And
you guys were in a bar, or he was in a bar. He brought the bar setting to a bowling alley.
Yeah,
and I'm about that life, watching.
So when he screams, like, who do you think you are? I am. Like, what is he talking about?
I think that was just like complete ramble, and I don't think that was the sentence his brain intended for him to say. But that's the way it came out, and I think that's part of the beauty, part of the charm of it too, is that it's non-scripted, and that's one of the things I've learned in this business is that if you come out with a scripted apology or a scripted line on a goal or a scripted line for a historic win, the crowd is going to see right through you and eat you up. They want that authenticity. They want that pure take of what's going through your body at that moment, whether it makes sense or not. And Pete Weber is that perfect example.
So I got a good question going with that a little bit. So I know I've heard stories of an incident with you in a U.S. soccer against Mexico game, pregame. Were you inciting some of the fans?
Do you
need me to go a little further? I was going to let you tell the story.
Are you going to roll a clip on me or something?
I'm going to have to bring our guest PI on the show to give you the.
I think I know what you're talking about. Probably several years ago, and this was in the throes and the heat and the passion of the Dos a Cero, and the fact that the U.S. just owned Mexico and owned them in Columbus, and American Outlaws, which is the big fan base for the U.S. national team, would have these night before parties, and they were awesome. And we kind of got wind of it, and it was more like Alexi Lawless is just a dear friend of mine, and he's really good at doing some slight self-promotion without patting himself on the back and making himself the star, but kind of like showing up and thanking this fan base for everything that they do, probably because it really wasn't there when he was a player. And as a fan of U.S. soccer, it's so cool to see it and hear it, particularly when it's in its early infant stages. And so we would go to some of these night before parties, just kind of sneak in, and somebody would obviously just handing you beverages and clinking and cheers and taking pictures. And Alexi's the star, right? Everybody wants a picture with him. And as much as you guys know, Alexi is a guy who talks all the time on Fox Sports. He really is actually a pretty lay low type of character, and he doesn't really want that attention when he's away from the microphone or away from the soccer field. So the microphone would kind of get pushed to me, and I would be a bit of the spokesperson. He would give a brief little talk, and then I would channel my inner wrestling nerd, and I would just kind of just be properly lubricated to the point where it felt like it was my duty and my obligation to rile up the crowd and get them motivated in advance of what was about to come. Almost like the general who's telling the army, we are going to war tomorrow, and this is how we're going to do it, and we are going to win, and we are going to dominate, and they're going to talk about us for decades and decades, and this is the moment things change. So I've had a few of those moments where I was handed a live mic and asked, and ever so slightly pushed, because it didn't take much pushing for me to do it. It's like, you know what it is? I guarantee you guys have been at, it's an open bar wedding with an open mic. We've all been to one of those. And it can be dangerous, but it can be fruitful as far as the entertainment value is concerned.
That's a good analogy. What about crowd surfing? Because I mean, like you said, you've been to several of these. I've heard through the years that you've been crowd surfing on taco trucks, and this is coming straight out of a guy that you work with every day. So
there was one taco truck incident. It happened again. That's the problem with these things, and it's the problem with human nature too. Is you do something. Exhibit A, right? You do Exhibit A of firing up the crowd in Columbus, and everybody loves it. And it's one of those things where if there were 200 people at the bar, 10,000 people are telling you they were there that moment for it, right? And so you go to the next place and you happen to show up and you're like, okay, I gotta deliver, and it's got to be a little bit better, right? And then so it starts growing, and then you get to that point where it's a fine line of how much further you can push that bar.
So who crowd surfed besides you? I think there was one legend that did it, correct?
There was one U.S. Soccer Hall of Famer who did it for sure, and it was. Oh, that's right. I forgot who the other one was.
Was Lex up there too?
Maybe. And I'll say this. Somebody's head coach was also up there, if I'm not mistaken. I feel like somebody's head coach might have been up there.
I'll go ahead and clarify so you don't have to be the one that said it. We all know Landon was up there with you, and Alexi was up there too. I don't know who the soccer coach was. I can't tell you.
The soccer coach is Sal's current soccer coach.
Oh, okay, got it. I didn't put two and two together then.
Yeah, it's one of those. It might have gone a smidge too far, but it was just too cool to pass up. And you're up there on top of a taco truck, and you're looking down, and you know how you're slightly being provoked to make your way down, and it's not safe to climb down the back. So you make yourself a projectile and you get it going. And in the end,
you made it out safely.
We got the win. That's all.
That was Bruce's first game, right?
Wow.
I think that was Bruce's first game. That was the Honduras game, was it?
Yeah, that might have been
the 6-0 game.
Yeah, that was the game. Leggett got injured too, by the way, which just.
I bet you were saying some good things about Bruce though in that game since it's his first game back.
Hard not to, I think I've been accused the last couple of years of being a Bruce apologist, and that's fine. I'll take those darts because you forget how much Bruce Arena has done for American soccer and the things that he's won and how he's brought this sport along. And I know his personality can grate people the wrong way. And that happens a lot of times with people who are successful. Look, there's a lot of people out there who don't like Bill Belichick and the way he goes about his business. But I felt really sad and bothered by the fact how the U.S. World Cup qualifying ended and that was going to be a stain on Bruce's resume. And I had it in my gut that I said, I know Bruce enough, not great, but I know Bruce enough that this is not the way his resume ends. There has to be another paragraph. There has to be another line or two to this. So I'm so happy to see what he's done in New England and picking up the reins. And New England is a sleeping giant. I think we all realize that if that ownership steps up to the point where they can finally get that stadium, and much less a stadium in Boston, I think that becomes a game changer in MLS. And I think we all realize that. We all know what a great market that is for sports and how much that would ignite MLS. And I think Don Garber's kind of called it that white whale out there. If we can just get that stadium in New England, it kind of puts all those negative MLS conversations and connotations behind us, and it was done. Yeah.
I was going to say that more so than being a Bruce apologist, I was just happy that somebody else wasn't the coach anymore. That's where I was headed with that one.
Understood. That too. That's a whole nother conversation for another time.
If you've listened to any past episodes, Benny probably rails Jurgen every 3. That's probably the ratio.
Yeah, that's a good rate.
It's
hey, he's a nice guy. Great soccer player, nice guy.
Hell of a soccer player.
Yep.
Yeah. I think the only thing I'll add to that is to your point, Benny. I think at some point, a lot of the truth and the moments will come out of what really transpired during that regime, and I think that'll turn a lot of heads, and I think some minds will be changed and altered.
I actually have a question for you.
Go ahead, Sal. Sorry.
Go, Sal.
Yeah.
Half of that stuff during Jurgen's reign has been talked about on this podcast. So, wanted to bring back up that story you wanted to tell about the Freddie Adu and Pele.
So when did Freddie hit the league? I'm trying to remember. Was it 90? Is it late 90s, 98, 90?
Well, he was
must
14,
be further than that.
Right? He was 14.
Yeah, 89. So it'd been
maybe?
it would be like 2002.
Was it 01?
Yeah.
Sorry. So it was somewhere early 2000s.
Yeah, early 2000s.
And it was exciting. It was exciting times for U.S. Soccer. You know what this young kid was doing and scoring these goals. And I still got MLS's back at that point and what they did with Freddie and the experiment. I know they might have thrown him to the wolves a little too early, but people have to remember where MLS was at that time, and they were hanging on. They were looking for anything that could pull them, out of the quicksand. And if all of a sudden this young American phenom who wants to sign with MLS and everybody knows his name and is addicted to the league because of that, then hell yeah, you do it. 100% you do it. And I remember there was a battle. Peter Novak was the head coach at the time. And I know he got a lot of pressure from up above to put Freddie in. It was an ABC game, right? A national audience, and so much content had been driven to this young man coming to save not only MLS, but save American soccer. I mean, that's a lot to put on any person's shoulders, particularly a teenager. But I remember, that it carried on, and he was in commercials, and I got wind day of or day before that he was shooting a Sierra Mist commercial with Pele in Tampa, Florida, which is where at the time I was living, and they were shooting at Raymond James Stadium. And I found a way to get in, and I wasn't really there obviously for Freddie. I was there for Pele. So sorry, Freddie. I go back to the 1998 World Cup. It was the first World Cup I ever worked. And Pele was it was MasterCard, right? That's his credit card, right? MasterCard. Mm-hmm. And so MasterCard set up this interview thing, and they had like a 10-minute, 15-minute window where whoever you were in the media, Italy, Spain, England, America, Israel, whatever, if you signed up and you were deemed appropriate, boom, you had a 15-minute window with Pele. And we got it, and I was the dude doing the interview. And it was the only time to that point that I broke the old journalistic rule of, you're not a fan, you're a journalist. And the interview ended, and my brain said, Stone, don't move on, right? Like forget the rule, get a picture with Pele, right? And I told him the rule in America, because it's clearly not a rule that they have in other countries. And I said, look, we don't do this in our country. I'm sorry. You are the first one, and you're the only one that I'm going to ask to break this rule. Can I take a picture with you? He said, absolutely. No problem. He smiled, got a great picture, blew it up, put it in a frame. Years later, I find he's in Tampa. I take that picture down. I bring it. I smuggle it in. And he's sitting in a tent, kind of like where the crafts table is, like having some food. He's all by himself. I have no chaperone. I have nobody with me. I've got me and a picture that's literally behind my shirt. Like I tucked it inside my shirt because I didn't want to be nailed for trying to bother the star. And I come up to him and I'm like, excuse me, Pele. I'm like, I'm so sorry to bother you. I have to show you this picture. And I take out this picture and I show it to him. And he looks at it, and he looks at me, and he looks at it. He goes, that's you and me. I go, yeah. Yeah, Pele, it is. And he goes, when was that? I go, it was World Cup 98, France. I interviewed you. And he looks at it. He looks at me. He looks at it. He goes, we look good. Let's take another picture with the picture. So we get somebody, and we're holding the picture. So I have a picture at my house of Pele and me holding a picture of Pele and me. That's my Sierra Mist. That's one of the few little humble brag moments that I have.
Good.
What a nice dude. What a nice dude.
That's awesome. I got to meet Pele at New England Revolution, actually, when I don't remember what he was doing there, but he came into our locker room. I think he was maybe doing a commercial or something like that as well. And he came into our locker room at Gillette Stadium and said hi to all the guys. And I was like translating. I was translating because I was the only guy on the team. Yeah, because I was the only guy that spoke Portuguese at the time on the team. So
to be the translator for Pele,
it was awesome. I had like bushy hair. It was like 2011. I had bushy hair. We were the worst team in the league. It was awesome.
Wait, how?
We stumbled on something, Ike. We stumbled on something.
We find something every episode with Benny. I think we need to send Benny to therapy. He needs to get some of these thoughts off of his chest.
This is therapy. What are you talking about?
Maybe.
I got one more question, and then I'm going to leave it to the
better be about wrestling, Benny.
No, it's not about wrestling. It's about. This is also something that I got from the Fox crew, and your love for intricate dinners. So you throw some really nice dinners. At least I know that Mo on his debut, I think in Tampa, maybe you threw a dinner and you were in charge of it. I hope to be a part of this maybe someday, but tell us about your dinners.
Yeah, that's the Tampa one was a specific incident. There's a restaurant there called Burns Steakhouse, and I'm not a foodie, I'm not a food snob, but I was born in Tampa. I worked for Tampa. I moved back to Tampa. I had my 4 kids born at the same hospital I was. So I've got a great affinity to Tampa. And the steakhouse called Burns, Berns Steakhouse, is legendary. Not just in Tampa, not just Florida, but in the country. World's largest wine cellar, all these things. But it's just this amazing event, because it's not a dinner, it's an event. You have to parcel a good 3 to 4 hours, because the meal takes forever, but you're never like waiting for the next thing, right? It's constantly there. Next thing you know, you look at your clock, like, holy cow, it's 11 o'clock. Then we have to go upstairs. Like, they've got this whole other room called the dessert room, where it's just this huge, thick menu, like this big, of after dinner drinks and after dinner wines and all these great beverages that you can have and things like that, and desserts. So it turns into a 3 to 5 hour expedition for a meal. So yeah, most stumbled on that one. It was, our soccer television crew is like a family to me. And I think that way to a lot of other people. And again, we are fighting the good fight. Soccer's come so far in such a short time, I think, but we're still up against it. We know where we are in the depth chart, and we know we need to move up. So we do fight these battles. And I think it's worth, taking some time apart to break bread and be a team. You guys, when you guys were professional athletes and still are, those team meals are something you can't get back. And yeah. I miss my team. I really miss my team. And I look at the people I work with, whether it's bowling, soccer, basketball, or football, as these are my team. These are the guys that I go to battle with and I fight with. So, we want those team meals. And so often those team meals are where you get those wonderful moments of bonding that last a lifetime and are able to kind of carry you over a hurdle or a crutch that was in the way. And you guys can become a little bit tighter and stronger.
Yeah. I look forward to being a part. I remember I was there after the Atlanta game, but I was feeling sick, so I didn't really get to enjoy it. It wasn't the best time for me.
There'll be some good meals coming forward.
Yeah. I hope to be a part of them, hopefully later, once we get all through this pandemic. All right, Ike, go ahead. Sal, someone other than me.
No, I think we can get into plead the fifth, right?
Nah. There's more. There's more.
Go ahead.
There's more. I mean, if I have to be the one bringing them up, then I'll bring them up. But there's more.
But I'll say this: I didn't think we'd ever be able to get. So we've had tiers of players and personnel and whatnot. I thought you were at the highest end, Rob. So that's why it took you so long.
That's your first mistake, Ike.
Well, maybe. I had to go through some back channels to get you, but I got you.
What back channel did you have to go through? I can name probably about 20 dudes that the three of you guys all know. They're like, Stone? Yeah, sure, whatever. I know he's free. Here's your number. Here, just accept my airdrop. You got it? You got to call him now. Here, I texted him. He's expecting your call, and I'm literally waiting. Waiting. Ike, you were my point person. You're like, hey, can I put you on the group chat? I'm like, yeah, you can put me on the group chat. I would love to be talking with these guys.
And I had to do it because obviously the pandemic is the only reason we could get you, because you're such a busy man that I had to make sure that we, so
not at all, but we'll use that as an excuse. That's fine.
Fair.
Well, I do have to ask, before you get into the fifths, I have to ask, out of all the people that you've worked with, and so you were giving me advice, right, on what to do, how to self-criticize and watch and that kind of thing. Who's a guy that you've, along your career, have had to really not baby, but look out for the most and try and get him to where you want to get him?
On the soccer side, right?
Yeah, on the soccer side.
Yeah.
Man, that's there haven't been too many people I've had to baby. It's difficult when you get into maybe like a World Cup setting or a Women's World Cup setting, and you are thrown together with very not short notice, but short background history with certain personalities and how they work and what they react to, because it takes time. Last year for Fox College Football, we debuted Big Noon Kickoff. And our bosses made a big deal. Urban Meyer and Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush, Brady Quinn and myself, they went out of their way to set up months and months and months out these get-togethers where the five of us could understand who one another is, where I could figure out that's too far. Oh, that's just right. Oh, he likes that. I can get Urban out of his shell. I can get Reggie to feel comfortable and trust us. With the World Cup, we don't really have that type of window. So it's not so much babysitting. It's more like these really quick, intensive meetings where I will pull somebody aside, like Eni Luco or Heather O'Reilly, or somebody that worked with us for the Men's World Cup, and I would say, hey, here's kind of how we do it our way, whether it's the Fox way or the American television way or whatever. So it was never babysitting. It was, hey, here, I just want you to know the rules we play by, because there's different rule books across the globe. And when they nail it, I make sure to let them know they nailed it, whether that's there's so much nonverbals in television. And again, we're talking about this team. I do a ton of like punching under the table. I'll hit people under the table like, yeah, you nailed it. Like, great hit, when I know they're not on camera. I'll give them that look somewhere, or during commercial, I'll talk a lot to them, like, that was perfect. What you did right there, that was a great example. But not too much hand holding. Certainly I've been blessed to work with some great personalities, but some personalities that can kind of weave and bounce in different places. When Stu and Mo were new, we would give them some pointers. Hey, don't be so rushed. Don't be so energetic. Just kind of channel it in and make sure you get in a cognitive point. Working with Eric Winalda, there were times where I was like, Waldo, you got to stop talking right now, because I'm trying to tape these things, and if I don't get these things done, we're all in big trouble. But there's other times where I could just let Eric go, and he was magnificent. Other times I had to reel him in and say, no, let's focus on these type of things. I'm not trying to belittle him at all, because he's a wonderful, fantastic, beautiful mind. But there's times where he's almost too intelligent, too fast, and has other things going on in his mind that he would go. But as far as hand holding, no, I think it was more kind of like holding hands, walking through the park together. How about that?
Yeah, Winalda's actually interesting, because I was just watching the MLS Classics. They played the first game.
Yeah.
And I was watching a little bit of it. I had to stop watching it after Bill Hamid was like screaming goal for one of the goals. I couldn't take it anymore. But
there was only one goal.
That's true. I only caught the last like 10 minutes of the game, thank God. But
and it was a nice finish from Winalda.
The game was shocking, by the way. But Eric's goal was fantastic. But he could remember
of Spartan Stadium.
He could remember every play of the game.
Steel trap.
I'm a little bit like that, but I don't know if I would have remembered something 25 years ago. He remembered every play. He could tell like how it was going to build up and what was going to happen before the goal and all that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
it was pretty impressive.
Eric and John Harkes both have that, and those guys could just remember and talk and go off. And I remember years ago, I was going to Lexi Lawless's wedding in Florida, and we were in Tampa at the time. We drove across the state, and the night before we were having dinner, and there's no jokes to this one. We're having dinner with John Harkes' wife, Eric Winalda, his wife, my wife, and myself. And I looked at my wife and I said, be prepared to not hear me talk all night. And she said, what are you talking about? Right. And I said, I'm not going to be able to get a word in. Like, it's going to be absolutely impossible. And that's when the two of them were at their absolute peak of being friends, of being buddies, of one-upping each other, of cracking jokes, of making small scenes for a table of six. Those two guys, those personalities are unreal, absolutely iconic in American soccer.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm done then. I'll
for now.
You're gonna enter now. We're going into the fifth.
Okay, yeah, the interrogation.
Yeah.
All right, Rob. So this is the worst part of the interview
now,
for you.
Ike is responsible for this?
Ike is responsible. It's called Ike's interrogation.
How much time do you spend like researching? Are you researching, or are you just trying to find an awkward question and then dropping me into it?
It's well, that for sure happens. Awkward questions dropping you into it. But I research a little bit, but it's pretty easy these days. Honestly, it comes to my head pretty quickly. And with the fan questions, which you've seen some, they've done so many of them that the fans and I kind of think alike. And so you're
crowdsourcing.
At this point, I don't even need to be here for the section.
Our podcast has gotten so big and so famous and so popular that your best friends have called us and told, "Oh,
Yeah,
you're
that's
getting
true.
Rob Stone on the show." Like, well,
I've
then
noticed.
ask him
I've
this because he
noticed.
won't know how to answer this part of it. So
Yeah.
that's where the problem lies for you. So
I'm excited, Ike. I'm excited.
I'm gonna leave it to Ike. You're joining Ike's interrogation. Your seat will start to get warmer. You know the rules. 5 questions. You got to answer at least 4 of them. You could plead the 5th to 1. If you answer all 5, you get 1 question for us.
I just
Good
want to say
luck.
I cannot wait for the first Minnesota game that I do after this is over.
So I had Mo. Mo was last week, and Mo crushed me after I gave up PK the first week. I was like, I'm letting them have it in the interrogation. Good for this. He stayed strong. We had to edit one out post, but
He's editing. You guys do post production. You guys
we
are
had to
good.
edit one. Yeah.
We will edit it out, but we won't get there. I've only made two people plead the 5th out of 7. I've been called soft on Twitter. That I'm getting softer with my questions. I'm like, it's a pandemic outside. We all need to be kinder to each other. But all right, here we go. Question number 1. We're gonna start off with a little bit of a bang, I think. Better sports crew to work with: Urban Meyer, Reggie Bush, Lineher.
I can't hear you. What?
Come back, Rob.
That's unfair, Ike. All right, go on.
Yeah, you're pretty much your whole football crew. Brady.
Yeah.
Yep. Or Stu Holden, Mo Adu, Katie Witham, and Alexi Lawless.
No brainer. It's the soccer guys for multiple reasons. Number 1, I absolutely love them. They're great personalities. And the second reason is my college football guys will never see this podcast, so they won't know what my answer is. Number 2, bam.
Hey, we're sending it to Reggie Bush.
Reggie Bush is next on the podcast.
He went to school with Sal and our producer, I think. So.
Oh, Reggie's a soccer guy too. Actually, he likes the sport.
Well, I think we've got our next guest.
There we go. I'll pass on the number.
Question number 2.
That was a good question, Ike, by the way. You did well with that one. That's good.
There's more to come.
Yeah, I know.
We'll take it to a fan question, though. So everyone, we didn't talk about much of your love for wrestling, but if you could deliver one wrestling finisher move to a current or past MLS national team player, who would it be and what would the finisher move be?
Oh, this is so good. Oh, man. I'm editing myself on a couple of these. God, who? Oh, this is a great question. 'Cause I know them. I have a great list of moves. I'm trying to think of who I would want to drop them on. I mean, there was clearly a time I would have loved to have given a DDT to Bruce, without a doubt. I can't even hesitate that. But I've moved on. Now I want to be his tag team partner. Somebody who really annoyed. God, that's the thing. Like, there are so few soccer people out there that have really agitated me and gotten me to the point where I get frustrated with them, because I say I'm a fan of American soccer, but I'm not a fan of Chicago Fire, DC United, LA Galaxy. I just want to see them all succeed, and I want to see these players do well. So, like, back in the day, like, everybody hated Dima Kovalenko, right? Everybody except for the Chicago Fire hated Dima Kovalenko. I loved Dima Kovalenko. Like, I 100% wanted Dima on my team. I 10,000% wanted to go in Chicago and have drinks with him. I 1,000,000% wanted Novak to join us. So I'm trying to think if I'm not avoiding the question. I honestly can't think of somebody that I'd want to lay the people's elbow to. I can't think of anybody that I want to put in the claw. I can't think of anybody I want to do the super fly to. I can't think of anybody I want to do the camel clutch to. Nothing is. It may come to me, so I'm not avoiding that. Give me go to number 3.
Okay.
Man, those are great. Really tough questions. Really tough questions.
That's a tactic. Don't listen to him. He's trying to, he's trying to make you be nice to him.
No, I'm bending the steel in this chair right now answering those.
I would have thought he would have pleaded on that one, but okay. Well, this fan question is a really good one too. I had to take 2 fan questions. I usually only take one, but I couldn't decide between these 2. If you could give any U.S., Canada, or Mexican city an MLS team, but they would have to replace an existing team, who gets the team and who do they replace? If this can't get him, I don't know what.
No, this is the best question. He's going to answer this one. This is the best question.
This one I'll answer. I've tried to go through the list because I've gone back and forth where I get frustrated. I'll use that term, frustrated with
Landon's
franchises
listening, by the way.
And how they handle things. There was a time all of us were really angry with Chivas USA. Just the embarrassment that they were long gone. So they already cleared that hurdle. New England has righted the ship to the point where I can't write them off right now. Wow, you're probably not going to like this answer. I tell you what, I'm looking at right now. I feel like I need to think this. Oh, you know what? Oh man. All right. So I'm going with jettisoning. I'm very frustrated with the two New York clubs. And again, I'm not knocking the players. I'm not knocking the personnel. I'm just knocking what they are right now. The way I view them, the Red Bulls, I don't see the care and the want and the love anymore in that franchise. I feel like Red Bull as a company has wanted out of that team for years. And if you want out, I want you out. This is me as an American soccer fan saying that. So I'm frustrated with Red Bulls. I'm frustrated with NYCFC. I'm sick of you playing on baseball fields and you can't even figure out what baseball field to play on these days. So that makes it even more frustrating. And I love the fact that they've got this money that's being brought in, but I feel like they've gone away from spending. And Dallas, I hate to say it, Dallas, there's a reason we are not doing nationally televised games in Dallas because people are not showing up because you picked, God bless you for making that stadium and building that stadium, but you picked the wrong place and the environment isn't great. And I know you accept that and you're trying to work on it, but Dallas, I'm kind of over you. I can't lose the New York teams. Right. I can't lose that New York market. And I know Dallas is a big market, but I just don't feel the love in Dallas as much as I love what they're doing with their academy and bringing in these kids. So it pains me to say, Dallas, I'm writing you off. You know who I would bring in?
I don't have a feeling. I don't even have a guess.
What's your guess?
My guess is where your boy Landon's coaching.
San Diego, baby.
No, but it's a good call. It's a good call. I go with my heart way too often. Tampa Bay. So the stadium.
Valderrama's the coach.
Wait.
Valderrama
the coach.
Oh, it's even better now. And Ivan McKinley's the assistant coach. We are making music. Ralston is the technical director. This is happening. MLS to Tampa Bay. They are playing the Tampa
Thomas
Bay
Wrongden's
Rowdies.
getting hired back as the head coach.
The stadium that the Rowdies are playing in USL right now. Sal, have you been there? Have you been to that stadium?
No.
Have you seen it? It is gorgeous. I know it's down in St. Petersburg, but it's downtown. It's an old baseball park that's been reconfigured, and literally one of the goals just looks straight out into the bay and a marina, and all you see are boats. And you have this beautiful, pleasant Florida breeze coming in, and it's sunny. And it's a market that got off to a bad foot when it was the Mutiny. They had a horrible name. They had a horrible logo. They had no owners, and they were playing in arguably the most cavernous stadium in Major League Soccer. They never really had a chance to do it properly. And I think if you drop them back there, they've got this incredible rivalry built in already with Orlando and with whatever this Miami is going to be. So that's my answer. I am not ducking any questions yet. Hey, bring on the next one, Ike.
Tampa Bay Mutiny was my first MLS team that I rooted for. Just because of Valderrama.
Valderrama was so good. And Rocket Roy Lassiter and Roy flying around after all those goals. Big dog.
My first ever game was watching Freddie actually play. So
Freddie played there in Tampa Bay, didn't he, for the Rowdies?
Yeah, that too. Yep. But I meant just in DC. DC. But I've got a great Freddie story, but I'm going to save that for when we get Freddie on at some point. All right. You're breezing through these. What's that?
He's 3 for 3. He's got the last question, and then he's got to go back to the second question.
Yeah. I think I'm
staying hydrated.
Forgot the second question already. Yep.
I'm terrible at my job these days. This is my one, and I can't even get guys to plead.
Job, Ike.
Make this man plead, dude. I want to know what his question is later.
Man. Do I lighten it up? Do I make it easy for him?
How many lists? How many are on this potential question?
You get 5. I have a list of 8. There are two that are just devastating, and I don't really want to do that.
Devastating. Give me devastating.
No, we're not doing devastating.
I've eaten a buchalogi pepper. Give me devastating.
That's gonna end up being the second worst part of your career after this
the
question.
last time I gave devastating was Mo last episode. We had to edit it out post. So.
Mo's face, dude, with that question. This guy was just laughing, saying no, like, no, you can't know this. How do you know this?
It was like 5 minutes of laughing and silence and shock. All right. Question number 5. I know you're a fan of the game of soccer. You're not supposed to have a team and all of that good stuff. But I've heard through the grapevine that you don't mind the Galaxy doing well.
Yeah.
Okay. So in your Galaxy Hall of Fame, one of these guys cannot make it.
Yeah, this is good. This is a totally fair question.
Okay. And we're not a huge Galaxy fan here. So Kobe Jones, Landon Donovan, Robbie Keane, a little throwback, Mauricio Cienfuegos, and David Beckham.
Golly, right?
One of them cannot enter the Ring of Fame.
There's 3 that have to be in there. So it's in between 2 for me.
I wanted to do a throwback in there to make it. The throwback one's good though. He was class.
Yeah, it's probably Cienfuegos, and it's annoying that he keeps getting disrespected like this, because I think if you talk to the pure fans of the LA Galaxy, they're saying that he's the guy who has to be the statue after Landon, right? Like Landon's the next statue dude. Wouldn't you think for the LA Galaxy? You got the Beckham statue. I think you have to have a Landon statue. More statues are coming.
I think Beckham being the first statue is a little weird, to be completely honest. I mean, as much as he meant more almost to MLS than the Galaxy.
Correct. I think that was an ode to what he did to the league, and still just the value that he has, and also that was kind of their last window to hold on to David Beckham as one of the Galaxy's own, because the transition that he's obviously made to Miami. So in that sense, I understand it. I think Landon is that second one, and I think Kobe is that third statue. So I think Kobe stays. So now I'm down to what did you say? Cienfuegos and Beckham
and Keane
and Robbie Keane. I mean, what Robbie Keane did, I think everybody, when you talk back to him, what he and Landon as the team, it's Cienfuegos. I'm sorry, Mauricio.
Cienfuegos is the guy. I remember Ziggy used to tell me that he was the only guy that didn't have to wear studs because this guy never slipped. That was the story that he would tell about him. He was allowed to wear whatever he wore. Whatever
like a quiet good, right? And overlooked and underappreciated, and that hurts. But I'm okay with it. I feel okay. Sorry, Mauricio.
You just did it again. So.
I did it again.
All right. So back to the second question?
I forgot it already.
Who is he gonna Mortal Kombat or WWE?
WWE.
God, I'm trying to think of it is totally escaping me. There must have been at some point there was clearly like a coach that annoyed me that I hated dealing with.
How about this? What player gave you the hardest time? With media, I like to joke around with beat writers and all that, and it's fun. But who was that guy that just would always give you a hard time?
One guy is Taylor Twellman, and I love Taylor, and but
you'll probably be on his show next week. By the way, he takes all our guests. So,
but it was his superstition, his calling that I don't want to talk before games. That's not what I do. And he never wanted to get involved in the media. But you remember back at that time, Taylor was a big story. He was a sexy story. He was not only a great player, but he was a great goal scorer, and he was an American. And if you're covering MLS, when you're trying to resuscitate this league, when you're trying to pump oxygen into its lungs, and you got a guy right here who's doing everything that you're asking for, but he's not talking, you get angry and you get agitated and frustrated with him. And I got angry with Taylor more because he wouldn't allow us to properly present him as the star that he was. We were trying to give him a mantle. We were trying to give him trophies. We were trying to, win him titles and honors. And, to his credit, to a point, he avoided it. But it really made us angry because, again, we're in this little television production bubble where all we're trying to do is sell stories and sell stars at that point. And he kept denying us. And he made it so damn difficult for us to sell the Revolution and to sell Taylor Twellman. So Taylor's that guy that I want to put in the camel clutch and a sleeper hold because I respected him and I loved him so much, but he wouldn't let us do our job properly.
And now he's doing what he's doing.
And now he's doing this, right?
What goes around comes around,
Yeah.
I'm sure. All right. You've successfully completed the interrogation. I'm 2 of 8. Terrible percentage from me.
Very
this year.
good questions, Ike, from you and the fans. Very, very good question. I'm curious about this, Ike, and this is not a dagger. Did you grow up in Durham?
I did, yes.
What was the youth soccer program that you got your start in?
I was a Triangle Football Club.
Triangle Football Club. So
Yeah.
I got my first start at Rainbow Soccer in Chapel Hill,
Chapel
North
Hill.
Carolina.
Wait.
How about that?
Why were you there?
I was living there. My dad worked for the university. So how about
Okay.
this? You have to root for either UNC or Duke. Who do you root for? Is that a tough question or is that an
No,
easy one for you?
Simple.
Okay,
Simple.
what is it? Who is it?
Duke. It was Duke. It's Duke.
All right, so you have the wrong answer. So the wrong answer.
Listen, they ran my club team. My dad worked at the hospital there.
So
I
how
was
come
born at the
you didn't go to Duke? How come you went to Wake
Duke
Forest?
ball boy.
What?
Listen,
The financial package was better at Wake? What are we doing here, right?
listen. I made a great decision going to Wake. Let's
Man,
just say
beautiful
that.
school. I love
Yeah.
it. I love that. I love Winston-Salem. I love the Carolinas. Yeah, I'm a big fan. And
I'll be an MLS draft enthusiast, even though I know it's getting more irrelevant. But I got love for the MLS draft.
yes, I miss it too. We did some, Alexi Lawless and I would do these bizarro MLS draft research sessions where we would sit at I think it was like a Residence Inn in Bristol, Connecticut. And we would buy like a 12-pack case of beer, whatever, and we would sit in this hotel room and we would take out our Rolodex and call every head coach, every assistant coach, every agent we knew the night before the draft because we hardly ever saw these dudes. If you didn't play in the College Cup, right, you had no idea who these college kids were. And we would call all these guys and we would call some of the college coaches that we knew. And we would just sit there cracking open beers and just calling dudes, putting them on speakerphone and just writing down note after note after note after note on these guys. And when somebody appeared, we're like, we know something about Giassi's artist. Where is it? We're whipping papers and trying to find it. But, the typical MLS super draft, there would always be a couple curveballs, a bunch of dudes you had never heard of and had no idea where they found these guys from. And you would just be trying your best to dance through it. Yeah, I missed the super draft too, but I understand why it's moved on.
Yeah.
So we have one more. You have one more responsibility on the podcast tonight because you answered all 5 questions properly and you didn't plead the 5th. You get to ask one of us 3.
Oh,
not really. He kind
okay.
of crushed you about Duke and UNC, but you can ask any one of us 3 any question. We have to answer it truthfully. If you have one, if you don't have
All
one, then you don't have to.
All right, Sal.
Yes. This guy. Yeah, no getting out of this one, Sal.
All right.
Let's hear it.
If Benny, God forbid, if Benny or Ike passed away, whose wife would you saddle up to try and console?
I don't know if I want him to choose my wife or your wife.
Choose Benny, Sal.
And I'll choose Benny's, and I'll say this because
Because is
We don't need a because.
I've never
We
even
do.
met Ike's wife, and I don't know what she looks like.
So we're going superficial. Well done, Sal.
So yeah, we're going. Yeah, so we'll go with Benny's.
Oh man, Michelle's been begging to come on the show. She's finally made it.
Yeah, Sal's apparently not a Love Is Blind fan because he didn't pick my
Yeah.
wife.
Well, that is a bizarre show. Woo. That's for the next episode, boys. Next episode. Hey, Team BSI, thanks for having me on. I appreciate. I'm sorry it took this long, but now you guys got my number. So when you got a slow week, give me a call. We'll do part 2.
Yeah,
All
we
right.
really
Love
appreciate
it.
it, dude. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah,
and
Thanks for what you guys do.
we'll see when this pandemic ends.
Absolutely. Be safe.
All right, have a good one, man.
You're up.
Thanks, Rob, for being on the show. That was a great episode. Love hearing the stories from the opposite side of things. I think it was a real interesting person to come on the show and kind of share those stories that we've never heard before.
Yeah, I love the part where he talked about he wanted to axe 3 teams in the MLS. I thought those
maybe more.
Yeah, maybe more, but I like.
Dude, I get what he's saying about Red Bull though, because like Red Bull won't get any players above like 25 years of age now, because that's like their entire philosophy across the entire world.
Starting to feel like a feeder team a little bit.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. Yeah. Right. So.
I feel it's NYC FC after being on that field, not having any clue where I was when I was on the field. Like I'm at right center back, and I'm in like right field. I'm like,
I don't know what you're talking about, bro. First game there, you scored a banger header off a throw-in.
Yeah, I wasn't even trying to head it that direction. I didn't know where the goal was. It's crazy, the dimensions.
All right. Anyways, BSI the podcast. You can find it streaming iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, TuneIn, SoundCloud, YouTube, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Overcast. Email BennySalThePodcast at Gmail. Platforms at BSI the podcast. I think, dude, did these guys all know this already? Is anybody even listening to this part of the podcast? Why am I repeating myself every time? Can we just like can we record this and like
we're not paying for every second of airtime. You could say it a little slower.
I honestly want to like say something really interesting right now to know who our real fans are.
If they're listening, donate to our COVID fund. Then
that's a
then
big
we'll
one.
know if you're a true fan.
Yeah, I'm actually disappointed in our fans. We like halted like 5 days ago. There's no more money coming into the GoFundMe. We still need to raise that stuff. Anyways, that's all we got for you guys today. We appreciate you guys stopping by, and we'll see you next week, maybe.
Maybe, guys.